I'm Helene Alon. We are now in this crash pad, sort of, that where I live, with 40 years of work all around me. And we're talking about something that happened in 1983, the Seneca Army Depot. And that was the culmination of a very long journey across the country. I had an earth ambulance, which was just merely a truck that was made to look like an ambulance, because I was very inspired by Helen Caldecott, who said, use your imagination wherever you may be to confront the arms race. And I was an abstract painter. I thought, as an artist, I will just use my imagination. So this is what we needed, an ambulance for the earth. I put this into the newsletter, said I'm an artist, said I want to go across the country, I want to go to the SAC bases themselves, I want to gather the earth near them and sort of rescue it, as it were, and bring it to the United Nations for the 1982 mass rally for disarmament. I made this here. It's called SAC, the SAC bases, Survive and Continue. I called it the Women's SAC Caravan, SAC for Survive and Continue, that's us. And this kind of scary letters, SAC, Strategic Air Command. The baggage is just the sacks of earth gathered from 12 SAC weapon sites. We wore them like this, like prayer shawls, actually, in a way. This is now in the Museum of Modern Art in their collection of political art documentation, but that's a long way later. Anyway, so that's the Earth Ambulance. Since then, I have done around, 9 Earth Ambulances, but this is the original one. There is a kind of an Earth Ambulance that speaks of the 82, 92 ambulance, and O2, it's O2. It's in the Hudson Valley Center for Contemporary Art, and it's permanent. And the pillowcases that the women rescue the earth in are hanging all around that ambulance, permanently there. So if anybody wants to see that and meditate, the inside of the ambulance is like a meditation room. And this is a different earth ambulance. It was part of the art world kind of thing, so I drove it down Fort Mason of San Francisco. This is 92. This is after we went to all of these bases, and it's 10 years later. And I get a call from the art world, because I am an artist, but it was the activism that was most important at that time, and I hadn't packaged it into art. And so Creative Time, very avant-garde organization that was under the Brooklyn Bridge, called me and said, we heard about your ambulance, can you want the Rescued Earth piece, you want to put that here? And I said, do it again for us? I said, I can't go back again 10 years later, because most likely the earth is contaminated. They said, well, we'll give you $5,000. So I said, well, okay, and I went and bought an ambulance. And I felt I had to have one. So it's a real ambulance, It has seeds that were given to us by Native Americans, the big mountain people that you saw. They gave us the seeds, and they're all over. They're on the dashboard, they're inside the ambulance, all over. And on top here, since that time, I had gone to the Soviet Union, and these are the pillowcases of Soviet women who wrote their dreams and nightmares about nuclear war. And as you saw in the tape, we just started to laugh. It was grandmothers mostly, and mothers, and we were showing each other the pictures of our babies and grandchildren, saying, is this a communist baby? Is this a capitalist baby? We were hysterical. We didn't know what to do. It was that kind of moment. Why in 1992? Because that was the end of the Cold War. It was a celebration. Susan Griffin came and Grace Paley to celebrate and read. I don't know, I never thought that people would really like the metaphor of a pillowcase that much. They wouldn't write on a piece of paper their dreams and nightmares, but they were able to do that. On Nagasaki Day, actually, I have people come into the ambulance and lie down on the stretcher, and I'm like a psychiatrist. I'm holding their hand and I'm saying, "You tell me about your dreams and nightmares about nuclear war." There was like a whole lineup inside the ambulance here, and that's what it looked like. And this seemed like a cathedral to me, actually. Here's Indian Point.
Indian Point being the nuclear
Yeah,
energy plant
that's right.
in upstate New York.
Yeah. I mean, wherever the earth was, we gathered them, the pillowcases, and we wore these. That's where it was. I mean, a lot of these places are near where people lived.
But why pillowcases, Helene? How
Okay.
did you think of that?
Why pillowcases? Because we don't sleep so well these days. That's what I've said. That's simple. We all sleep on pillowcases. Most people do. So it's the commonality rather than this political jargon and seeing the enemy that at that time was the Soviet Union. It was so absurd. The day at Seneca where we got together and we made this whole thing on November 9th, 1983. But I'd been in Seneca from the start, you know, and just gathering the pillowcases from people right there. We just had so much nerve, that all these women, you know, just to go right to the United Nations, and then I just brought lots of this clothesline. Those were my tools, clothesline, and of course clothespins, very important. And we went to the United Nations and hanging them on the trees, that's all. We did not get stopped. They didn't say anything. I guess they thought it was benign, but wait till you see what the townspeople, when they saw this, did. I don't know if you remember. They called me Kami.
Go home and climb the Berlin Wall, Kami. Congratulations.
Oh,
You got their attention.
here are these other nice young boys probably who have these jobs, and they're sort of blank. And I was amazed that one person in the police station said, "Can I have a pillowcase?" I said, "Well, the women will have to make you one just for you." They did, and he took it. I did it like an artist, very neatly across the trees, one long line between First and Second Avenue. But the second year, I got so many pillowcases that I just went all over the place. And here they are. You see all the messages on them.
I'm curious what, after all these stops, you made 13 stops in '82 on the way to United Nations. What was it like arriving at the Seneca Army Depot where there was women's encampment and all of that? How did that differ from these experiences?
Well, we didn't have the
speak?
ambulance then.
Okay.
I just went, and then I met Lee Davis, who said she's going with her car and I could bring my pillowcases, and I went with my thousands of pillowcases, and then asked others to write on pillowcases there, and the women just liked to do that. They just went right to it. I came again and I stayed in the land for, you know, and that's how it was.
What, do you remember anything about being on the land? Any experiences that stand out? Memories?
Well, meeting the people, and then just on August 1st, the thousands. Were you there on August 1st? Oh, remember how dense it was? How amazing it was? Yeah.
How hot it was.
Yes.
How many times we
And
got
how
stopped.
we were sort of like 5 or 6 in a row, walking, linked to arm, and singing. It was just amazing.
Had that been something you'd done before? That level of...
No, because there were all these people behind me. I was alone. I'm a lone artist. I don't belong to any organizations. And I just had this thought about the pillowcase, which was larger than myself, because I didn't know it was going to get this big. I didn't know that people were going to send me pillowcases from far away, like Green Common. So it just got larger and larger. And then it became an art world thing. And I showed it at the Berkeley Museum. I just hung it in the front of museums, Knoxville, Berkeley, and in Washington, D.C.
And that was nothing you envisioned that when you thought of this?
No. It was just, they were knotted, I knotted them together. I called it Bridge of Knots, like it's that feeling of a bridge, that linking of the arms was the inspiration. So this is the itinerary. May and then going, till June 12th. That was the original plan before Seneca. And it was against the sack bases. With the ambulance. Here are all the pillowcases on the army stretchers, which I'll show you. So I had written, like I said, that little blur of Helen Caldicott's organization. There were some who answered. A Native American woman answered and said she would go the whole way. Some women, they were women, said they just wanted to have a nice trip and they came part way, and some wanted to go the whole way. There was a student of mine, because I was teaching at San Francisco State at the time. She came, she knew about it, the Chinese woman. So we actually camped out for 14 days. The second time, in 1983, we just camped out. Women from Holland came. Could you read that? Seneca delivery, something like that? Pillowcase delivery, Seneca Falls.
Pillowcase delivery.
That was the reason that I went to the UN the next year, 1983. The first year was just for the rally. 82 was from San Francisco to New York to the United Nations.
Right.
83 was New York, whoever came to the United Nations, starting there, it was July 4th, at the UN, and then went to Seneca from there. In Seneca, you could see the women jumped over the fence, but they cut the pillowcases, wore them as shields for empowerment. And then I just decided this is a participatory kind of metaphor, and it has a life of its own, so when women wanted to use it that way, I felt good. I was arrested on June 13th, 1982. It was a civil disobedience after the UN, and what I did was I sat in front with other women, sat in front of the Soviet embassy. We wrote to our Soviet mothers, where are you? To our Soviet lovers, to our Soviet sisters, on pillowcases. We blocked the traffic, and that's how we got arrested. So then what happened was Ms. Magazine somehow found out about that, made a little blurb about this. And then I got a call from, of all places, Grandmothers for Peace. And they said, we want to go to the Soviet Union. We want you to come because it's a metaphor, and we could, talk to the women that way. We don't know the language. That's how I got to the Soviet Union. They took me. So one thing led to the other.
In your vision in the beginning of sacks and then the pillowcases has grown into many, many projects.
Absolutely. In the beginning, the sack represented like, what do we take? What do we carry? It was also, actually the Wandering Jew had a sack. And then after that, you saw the images in the Holocaust even of the sacks, whatever they took. And then after that, it became our common grounds, the sand sacks, then stone sacks, then the earth sacks. And later, the seed sacks, which were in Japan, en route to the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So it's the SAC. SAC, survive and continue.
Why women? Why did you seek women?
Well, first of all, as an artist, I could choreograph what I would like to choreograph, so I could choose that. So in 1981, uniting women from warring countries, I worked with women, Arabic and Jewish women, talk them into gathering stones right there, Actually, it was amazing. There was something called the Kenes, which was a feminist conference, the first feminist conference in Israel. I went there. There were 498 Jewish women. There were 2 Arab women. I walked right over to the Arab women, and I said, do you want to do this? And I talked them into gathering the stones. I could not imagine, as an artist, going over to men and asking them to do this. We did not know then how horrible the situation would become. It was like, hey, we didn't talk politics hardly. It was like, let's clean it up. The Intifada, those teenage boys were just starting to throw stones, and like women always clean up after them. Let's just pick up the stones. symbolically. Women can do this. It was like a utopian idea. Oh, women will, sure, we'll just do that, you know. And also, they wanted to see themselves on video. There was no video there, so I sort of lured them into it. And I said, you know, we'll see, we're going to try to take some video. So they liked that idea, and that I was having a show in the חיפה Museum that night, and I said, we're going to just show it raw in the museum. Well, they invited all their relatives, and the museum was filled with Arabs and Jews. And we went out for Turkish coffee after that. We didn't talk politics, and I don't know, it was so easy. You know, men have enough occasions to do things, right?
Great. For many women, that was the first gathering of totally female energy.
In Seneca.
And Seneca.
Yes. Yes, it was electrifying. It was so vibrant. You could almost, it was palpable. You could just feel it. You know? Yeah.
Were there
Yeah.
friendships that you made?
Yeah, well, like this lead person who drove me there and found me 23 years later. I mean, that was it. You know, she drove me. We bought the pillowcases and everything that first time, the very first time in Seneca. Then 23 years later, she saw me on something of me on the internet, and she said, "That's that person." She called me, and it was like instant love and friendship and devotion, the kind of thing that you just don't have with anybody unless you've worked with them, even if it's one day, even that one trip there. There's something about that kind of thing.
Kinship.
And you can't put your finger on what that is, but there's a bond that's eternal. She came with me to Washington, D.C. to show the pillowcases and the American University Museum. She's a real activist, much more than me. In fact, she encouraged me. She said, "You've got to make another ambulance." She wanted to go through the streets of Newark. I mean, that kind of real grassrooty person. So we made the ambulance again. She found somebody with a white van in her group there, and it was about getting out of Iraq to use the funds for the environment. So she wanted the ambulance there to cause attention to that.
Did you meet any other artists?
There was Mae Stevens, who's a political artist, was there for one march there that I saw, but I didn't see many artists there. No. Although they may have been artists, but I didn't see art world artists, let's put it that way.
Right.
The next step was to think of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I mean, we were so afraid of nuclear war. That was the whole reason for Seneca. It was the whole reason for Helen Caldicott's talking. But actually, there was a nuclear war. It was the dropping of the bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We forget. So that's why I went to the Hibakushas on 1985 on the 40th anniversary of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and to get the pillowcases of the survivors, the hibakushas, and let them write their last messages in their own language in their own homes. And then I had the students take sacks en route, called current, 2 sacks en route. They floated them down the rivers en route to Hiroshima and Nagasaki, sacks of seed. They all put in resuscitative ingredients like a grain of rice, a bamboo shoot, something, and that like a resuscitative thing to show that the world could start again. 10 years later, packaged into the art world, I showed it in Times Square as a meditation, as a 2-minute meditation. It was, in between a Playboy ad or who knows what, in between what Gap, maybe it was Gap, same thing. So there it was, everybody's rushing around, and then it was very slow motion. I asked, 1 seed, 1 pod, 1 grain of rice, what would you take? What would you carry in your sack?
What makes art political?
A political artist makes it political, I guess. It comes through, or feminist artist makes it feminist. It should not look like propaganda. It should have a metaphor. For me, it has a metaphor that touches deeply.
Is it possible for you to create non-political art?
I do.
You do?
I mean, good question, because everything has it's issue-oriented, let's put it that way. Well, I started off, as you saw, with more paintings, and it was about body of the land and the body itself and time, and very subtle, very metaphoric.
What is your family? What have they thought of the work you do?
Oh, well, they, of course, I mean, they didn't want to know. Not too much, But then after that, when we came to New York, we brought the Earth ambulance to my mother's house, and she made dinner for all the women who were there. There were 11 women, by the way, on the first Earth ambulance. And she was just glad to see me safe and that kind of thing. She was a little perplexed about, parking in front of her house in Borough Park, Brooklyn, which is a Jewish ghetto. I don't know if you know that place. Anyway, is that Peterson sack base, and this is Kirtland sack base. These are different. The pillowcases were from the different sack bases. They were brought down on the army stretchers, and then they were opened up and poured into these plexiglass boxes that I used for frames for paintings, and I called them earth paintings, because each one had a different color. It was like a geological map of America, like this beautiful sienna sands from Los Alamos, near Los Alamos, or the dark umber near Pittsburgh. These are the ones from 2006 at the American University Museum, and here I filmed it just dropping. It was alluding to 911, alluding to where we're at right now. It's not flying beautifully, it's just dropping. So you saw that. Yeah. I was hoping that George Bush would see it. I don't think he did. That's in Berkeley Museum over here.
Incredible.
Yeah. So I had like Seneca pillowcases. These are the Soviet pillowcases. On the other side were the Japanese that you saw.
Mm-hmm. Do you provide some text to go with some sort of background and what?
Yes, I have those texts
Okay.
to show you.